If you are over 60 and you have been watching Warren Buffett's moves and wondering what he knows that you do not, what I am about to share with you could be what every retiree should hear once before it is too late. I have spent 4 decades studying markets and watching people quietly mismanage the most important money of their lives. I have read every Berkshire Hathaway shareholder letter since 1977, and I have walked through 14 recessions watching what the best investors in the world actually do when things get scary. I have watched countless retirees and near retirees face this kind of moment without a plan. Now I am going to share the 3-step framework I have used to help them stop reacting and start thinking clearly. I know this sounds like a bold claim. You have every right to be skeptical. After watching Wall Street shift its advice every 5 years for decades, one more voice on the internet telling you what to do is not obviously worth your time. But the math behind this is plain, and the history behind it is undeniable. This framework has been tested through every kind of market you can imagine. The Great Depression, the 1970s inflation, the dot-com crash, 2008, COVID, and the rate shock of 2022. This is not speculation. This is not a sales pitch. This is a simple discipline you can do yourself. If you follow through, it will work for you too. Surveys show that retirees fear outliving their savings more than they fear death itself. That is not a dramatic statistic. That is what happens when you have spent 40 years building something and now you have to live off it, watching it shrink a little every month, unsure whether the shrinking will stop or whether it will eventually reach zero. The fear is not irrational. The math that produces that fear is real. The average 65-year-old today will live into their mid-80s. A married couple at 65 has roughly a 70% chance that at least one of them reaches 90. That means your money may need to last 25 to 30 years. At the same time, healthcare costs for retirees have been rising faster than general inflation for decades. A couple retiring today should expect to spend somewhere between $250,000 and $350,000 on medical expenses alone over the course of their retirement, not counting long-term care. Add to that the fact that most private sector workers no longer have a pension. Instead, they have a 401 and a Social Security check. The 401k is a pile of money they have to manage themselves. The Social Security check is fixed. The gap between what that covers and what they need is real money that has to come from somewhere. Your fear is not irrational. It is the accurate recognition of a very real gap. Warren Buffett does not move his portfolio around for fun. He moves it when he believes the price he is getting is not worth the risk he is taking. In the last 12 months, Berkshire Hathaway has been trimming some of the biggest winning positions it has held for years. Apple, Bank of America, names that made Berkshire enormous sums of money. He did not sell because he hates them. He sold because the price relative to what those businesses are actually worth had gotten stretched. He sat on those positions for years while most of Wall Street told him he was too conservative. Now those positions have run up dramatically, and he is quietly taking chips off the table. That move is not a signal to panic. It is a signal to pay attention. Buffett is not predicting a crash. He is simply doing what he has done his entire life. He is only paying what a business is worth, and when the price goes above that, he gets patient and he gets out. Let me tell you about a man I knew, a retired engineer named Donald, who retired in 2000 with $680,000 saved. He was 63. His financial advisor at the time told him to stay fully invested. The market had been extraordinary for the better part of a decade. The advice made sense on paper. The idea was that Donald had a 30-year time horizon, so short-term dips did not matter. What the advisor did not account for was sequence of returns. The dot-com crash hit in March of 2000. By the end of 2002, Donald's $680,000 had dropped to roughly $380,000. He was still withdrawing $27,000 a year to live on, because he needed the money, not because the market had cooperated. By the time the market recovered in the mid-2000s, Donald's account had been so badly drained that the recovery barely helped him. He was withdrawing from a depleted base. He sold his home in 2011 at 74 and moved in with his son. The conventional advice was not wrong about saving. It was wrong about sequence. The order in which returns arrive, especially early in retirement, matters more than the average return over time. Losing 40% in year 1 of retirement is catastrophic in a way that losing 40% in year 20 is not. Donald's story is not unusual. It happened to thousands of people in 2000. It happened again in 2008, and it will happen again. 3 steps. That is the framework. Step 1, build your income floor. Step 2, protect your sequence by keeping a cash buffer. Step 3, keep a long horizon growth position and hold it without panicking. Together, these 3 steps solve the problem that Donald could not solve, not because he lacked discipline, but because he lacked a structure that matched how retirement income actually works. I have spent decades refining this framework across hundreds of conversations, reading everything from Federal Reserve papers to Buffett's own letters, watching real families apply it, and watching real families ignore it. Stay with me. The math is easier than you think. Step 1 is the income floor. The income floor is the monthly income you can count on no matter what the market does. Social Security, if you have a pension, that pension payment, and if you choose to add it, an income annuity. The goal is to get your income floor as close to your essential monthly expenses as possible. Essential expenses are the ones you cannot cut: housing, food, utilities, insurance, and basic medical. For most retirees, that number is somewhere between $2,500 and $4,000 a month, depending on where you live. Social Security at 62 pays roughly 30% less per month than it pays at 70. If your full retirement benefit at 67 is $2,200 a month, claiming at 62 drops that to about $1,540. Waiting until 70 pushes it to about $2,728. Over a 25-year retirement, that gap compounds dramatically. The person who claims at 62 and lives to 87 collects roughly $462,000 in lifetime benefits. The person who waits until 70 and lives to 87 collects roughly $490,000. The difference shrinks when you account for the money you gave up by waiting, but the monthly income difference, $1,540 versus $2,728, is the number that actually determines whether you can cover your floor without touching your savings every month. That matters because every dollar you do not have to pull out of your investment account in a down year is a dollar that gets to stay and recover. Most people claim Social Security too early. They do it because they are scared, or because they think the system will go bankrupt, or because they want the money now. None of those reasons are wrong, exactly. But for most people who are in reasonable health and have savings to bridge the gap, waiting as long as you can to claim Social Security is one of the most powerful financial moves available to you. If your floor is covered by Social Security and a pension, you do not need your investment account to write you a check every single month. That freedom changes everything about how you handle the market. So step 1 you can take this week is this: sit down and write out your essential monthly expenses. Then look at what your Social Security benefit would be if you claimed this year versus 3 or 5 years from now. That comparison alone will show you whether delaying is worth it in your specific situation. Let us move to step 2. Step 2 is the cash buffer. The cash buffer is a separate pool of money, not invested in stocks, not in bonds, not in anything that moves around with the market, that covers 2 to 3 years of living expenses above and beyond what your income floor covers. If your essential expenses are $3,500 a month and your income floor covers $2,500, you have a $1,000 monthly gap. Over 3 years, that gap is $36,000. Your cash buffer needs to hold at least $36,000 in something like a high-yield savings account, a short-term CD, or a money market fund. Right now, in 2024 and into 2025, money market funds and short-term CDs are paying between 4% and 5% annually. That means your buffer is not just sitting there losing value to inflation. It is earning a real return while it waits. The purpose of the cash buffer is simple. When the market drops, and it will drop, you stop pulling money out of your investment account and you pull from the buffer instead. You give your investments 2 to 3 years to recover without forcing you to sell anything at a loss. The 2008 market drop took about 4 years to fully recover. The 2020 COVID crash recovered in less than 6 months. Most market drops recover within 2 to 3 years. Your buffer is sized to match that history. Some people hear this and worry they are holding too much in cash. They are not. The buffer is not your retirement account. It is your shock absorber. Think of it as the crumple zone in your car. You do not want to use it, but you are very glad it is there when you need it. A $36,000 buffer earning 5% in a money market fund earns you about $620 a year while it waits. That is not nothing. And when the market drops 35% and your neighbor is panic selling their Apple shares at the bottom, you are sitting still and watching. That is the entire point. Buffett has been doing a version of this his entire career. Right now, Berkshire Hathaway is sitting on over $160 billion in cash and short-term treasuries. He calls it dry powder. Retirees call it a cash buffer. The principle is identical. When prices get stretched, you hold more cash. When prices get reasonable, you deploy it. So step 2 you can take this week is this: open a high-yield savings account or a money market fund. Most major brokerages offer one, and start moving enough to cover 24 months of your monthly income gap into that account. You do not need to do it all at once. Start with what you have and work toward the target. Let us move to step 3. This will sound backwards. Stay with me. Step 3 is to keep a real growth position, stocks specifically, and hold it through the market's noise. Most people over 60 have been told by their financial advisors to reduce their stock exposure as they age. Shift to bonds. Go conservative. The idea is that you cannot afford a big loss at this stage. That idea is half right and half dangerous. The half that is right, you should not have your entire retirement in stocks. That is what the income floor and the cash buffer handle. The half that is dangerous, if you move entirely out of stocks and into bonds and cash, you are betting that inflation will not erode your purchasing power over a 25-year retirement. That bet has historically been a losing one. Here is the math. $250,000 invested for 20 years at 8% real return, meaning after inflation, grows to about $165,000. The same $250,000 invested at 1% real return over $205,000. The gap between those two outcomes is $860,000. That gap is the difference between financial comfort and financial strain. Bonds and cash have historically returned somewhere between 0% and 2% after inflation. The broad stock market has historically returned somewhere between 6% and 8% after inflation over long periods. Over 20 years, that difference is not marginal. It is the difference between having money left at 85 and being out of money at 78. The real risk is not watching your account value drop for 2 years. The real risk is running out. Buffett has said this many times in different ways. His advice for most ordinary investors, people who are not trying to beat the market, people who just want their money to outlast them, has been consistent for 40 years. Own a low-cost index fund. Hold it. Do not sell it when it drops. He has specifically criticized financial advisors who move retirees out of stocks in the name of safety, because over a 30-year horizon, safety from volatility is not the same as safety from poverty. They are opposite dangers. The advisor who protects you from the first danger is often accidentally exposing you to the second. The objection I hear most often is this: my advisor told me at my age I should have no more than 30% in stocks. That rule of thumb, 100 minus your age in stocks, was invented decades ago when life expectancy was shorter and bonds paid more. A 65-year-old in 1975 had a 10-year retirement horizon. A 65-year-old today has a 20 to 25-year horizon. The rule has not kept up with the reality. a low-cost S&P 500 index fund with a 0.03% expense ratio, and those exist today at Vanguard, Fidelity, and Schwab, is not speculation. Speculation is trying to pick the next NVIDIA. Owning the entire market and holding it for 20 years is not speculation. It is math. So step 3 you can take this week is this: look at your current investment account and find out what percentage is in stocks. If it is below 40% and you have a 15 to 20-year time horizon, sit down with a fee-only financial advisor, someone who charges a flat fee, not a commission, and ask them to show you the inflation math on your current allocation. Ask them what your money will be worth in purchasing power at 85 if it grows at 1% real versus 6% real. Then let the numbers make the decision. Now let me handle the 4 objections that are probably sitting in the back of your mind right now, because leaving those alone would be doing you a disservice. The first objection: what if I die early and the money I left in the market just goes to my kids unused? That is not a retirement problem. That is an estate planning gift. If you die at 72 with money still in your account, your children or your heirs inherit it. The alternative, spending down everything as fast as possible to make sure you use it, is the path that leaves you with nothing at 82. The goal is not to spend every dollar. The goal is to never run out. The second objection: what if inflation ruins the plan? Inflation is exactly why you keep a growth position. Stocks have been the best long-run hedge against inflation that ordinary people have access to. Bonds and cash lose purchasing power in inflation. Stocks, especially in diversified index funds, tend to hold purchasing power because the companies inside them can raise their prices. The income floor covers your fixed expenses. The growth position fights inflation over time. The third objection: what if the market crashes right when I retire? This is the sequence risk problem that destroyed Donald. The answer to it is the cash buffer. You do not touch your investment account in a down year. You live off the buffer. You give the market time to recover. The framework specifically exists to solve this problem. The fourth objection: this feels complicated. Can I actually do this? The 3 steps are: build your income floor, build your cash buffer, hold your growth position. That is it. The actions this week are simple. Write down your essential expenses. Open a high-yield savings account. Call a fee-only advisor and ask about your inflation math. 3 steps. Each of these concerns has a clear answer inside the framework I just gave you. She had not opened a brokerage statement in 2 years. Her name was Margaret. She was 68, a widow, and her husband had handled all the financial decisions for 41 years. When he died in 2019, she had about $500,000 in a rollover IRA, a Social Security benefit of $450 a month, and no pension. Her essential monthly expenses were $3,200. The gap between what she had coming in and what she needed every month was $7,750. She was pulling that $1,750 directly from her IRA every single month, including through the COVID crash of 2020, when her account dropped from $540,000 to around $365,000 in 6 weeks. She did not sell intentionally. She just kept taking the withdrawal because she needed the money. By the time the market recovered, she had withdrawn so much at depressed prices that her account never fully caught up. When she finally sat down and looked at what was left, it was $310,000. She was 71. She calculated that at her current withdrawal rate, she would be out of money by 80. She was terrified. We walked through the 3 steps together. First, she delayed her Social Security from its current amount by switching to her deceased husband's benefit. Survivor benefits are often larger, and hers in this case were $2,100 a month, significantly more than what she had been collecting. That closed the monthly gap from $1,750 down to $1,100. Second, she moved $26,400, enough to cover 24 months of that remaining gap, into a money market fund earning about 4.8%. That was her buffer. Third, she left the remaining $283,600 in a broad index fund and stopped touching it. 18 months later, she called me. Her account had grown to $340,000. She had not touched the investment account once. She had used $11,000 from the buffer during a rough patch, but had refilled most of it. She was sleeping again. She had taken her first trip since her husband died, 3 days in New Mexico to see her sister. She told me she felt like herself again. That is what the right framework, applied with discipline, does. Not just for money, for life. You spent the last 45 minutes of your life with me. That choice was not small. Most people keep scrolling when the topic is uncomfortable. You stayed. The next video on this channel is about when delaying Social Security to 70 actually pays, and when it does not, because the answer is not the same for every person and most of the guidance online gets it wrong. It builds directly on step 1 in the framework we just covered. If you implement step 1 this week and write out your monthly expense gap, that video will show you exactly how to decide whether delaying is the right call in your specific situation. Hit subscribe because this work is not content. It is a discipline, and disciplines require community to survive. Retirement Confidence is a community of people who refuse to let fear run their retirement. You belong here. We will see you in the next one.